Welcome back. Now, the Leaving Cert, it is changing and not everyone is happy about it. The government's proposed reforms would see 40% of students' grades coming from continuous assessment, marking the biggest shake-up to the system in decades.
So joining us now to discuss is Irish Times editorial columnist Brian Mooney and General Secretary of the ASTI, Kieran Christie. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Good morning.
Kieran, let's go to you first of all. The ASTI have voiced strong concerns about this introduction of the 40% continuous assessment. What specifically are those concerns?
Yes, certainly we've a number of concerns around the senior cycle redevelopment programme. Well, firstly, I would say that we're not opposed to redevelopment of the Leaving Certificate, but what we've called for actually was a pause in order for the system to get an opportunity to prepare properly for change and to make other adjustments to what's proposed, certainly. But the truth of the matter is that the Minister, in our opinion, is rushing it. We think, the previous Minister used the word accelerated implementation, and we think this acceleration of implementation is going to be detrimental. For instance, many of your audience may not be aware that there's a total of 9 new subjects coming in September at Leaving Certificate level, all on top of a system that's bursting at the seams with initiative overload, and it's just not ready. I'll give you an example. We recently in the ASTI did a survey of our principals, and in excess of 50% of them said, for instance, in relation to the new science syllabi introduction, there's just inadequate laboratory facilities in schools, and all of that needs to be looked at, properly audited and prepared for.
OK, we were talking about this yesterday as well in relation to how you would store things, AI. Brian, you've been covering education for years, former teacher yourself. What do you make of this? Norma Foley said that the previous minister, that they had to accelerate this implementation. Do you think this is too fast for the system to handle, or do you think there are other issues at play?
Well, if you look at the actual breakdown of grading for all Leaving Cert subjects, we have had 40% plus in a range of subjects over the years as subjects have been introduced, the new computer science curriculum, the new PE curriculum, the current existing arts curriculum. You have 40% on the oral Irish, 10% on the oral. You have 25% already on the continental. But what we're getting to is the core subjects that have had the 100% up to now. And effectively, a lot of teachers who were trained in the 80s and the 90s measured their success. And there was a teacher on the other night, and he was talking about, as a biology teacher, I know how to get H1s. I know, and in the present system, I can get the H1s. But under the new system, I don't know how to get H1s. For me, the issue is we know that when students go into college now, we have to totally retrain their brains, because the world in which you were teaching people to just give them knowledge to regurgitate no longer is effective preparing young people for the world they're actually going to have to go into in college and in life. So effectively, getting somebody a H1 may in fact not be the sign of success if that person therefore goes on and is floundering the minute they walk out of the secondary school system into college or into the world of work. Because what we need in life now are the analytical skills, the skills to be able to assess information, to be able to use AI effectively, and to be able to integrate it into your work and do it honestly, because that's effectively what real life is going to challenge. But for teachers who have been used to presenting material to students, which then they use to get their H1, they see that as a huge challenge. And again, Kieran is right in terms of lab facilities and retraining these teachers to teach maybe in a different way. Well, so there are real issues there. I
listened to the Minister Helen McEntee speaking about this, said that AI is here, but we are trying to prepare our students for life after, for our third level education, for life after that as well. Kieran, teachers have been asking for these reforms for years. I mean, this is over a decade. Senior cycle reform has been talked about, but now all of a sudden it's here and teachers seem to be the ones wanting to hold it up.
No, I wouldn't agree with that. Just on Brian's point there, he's absolutely right. But the core subjects of, for instance, science, never had additional assessment components, and the entirety of the scientific community, even in third level, very senior voices, have been calling out the idea that you would be doing that to the rate of 40% in those subjects. But that said, no, we're not opposed to redevelopment. What we want is meaningful, orderly redevelopment, and we really see this as being quite likely to be quite chaotic in the manner in which the minister is approaching it. And all we're actually doing, and Brian would be aware of this, is we're actually asking the minister to go back largely to what was originally announced in terms of the scheduling of this, and to remove the acceleration that Minister Foley introduced about a year or 18 months ago. All of this has been brought forward far too fast. We need to calm the waters, we need to prepare, and we need to be properly trained. I'll give you an example. Teachers are going to teach the business redevelopment of their business subject, very important subject for many students, next year. And they have received the sum total of 1 day of training thus far. And that's how they'll be walking into the classrooms in September, totally inadequately prepared.
And that does seem very, like it does, like you think that there should be more involved in that. But I suppose, Kieran, we were talking about both you, the ASTI and the TUI, talking about industrial action next year. If this does go ahead, is that something you're going to follow through on? Because the minister says she's not for moving.
Well, what we've said is that we're currently in a negotiation process with the Department of Education. And arising from that, we may have an outcome which we can ballot our members. Now, if the outcome of that ballot of members is that they're, somewhat reluctantly willing to accept additional supports that the minister is promising us or whatever, that's fine and we will continue. But if it's not, obviously, as trade unions, we'll take a look at other options. And that may, unfortunately, involve consideration of industrial action.
I mean, you can see where the frustration will be with this, but if that is the stance that the teachers might have to take, Brian, where do you see this going?
Well, at the end of the day, I think there is justice in the teachers' claim that they need a level of preparation. If you're going into any role, you need to be properly prepared for it.
Absolutely,
but effectively, I think that what we have here, that there's a cultural thing going on here, as I say, with teachers who have seen success and been measured in success on their ability to give it out and then the students give it back, etc. Those core subjects are going to have to learn ultimately that success is more to do with analysis, with presentation, with the use of AI, with working with individual students on projects. It's a different way of teaching. To expect people to move after 25, 30 years of teaching on 1 day's training,
that's very tough to do.
The minister has spoken that there will be more training in September, but like these teachers are just coming off a 2-week break holiday, will then be going having a 3-month holiday. So trying to squeeze training in can't be easy either.
Again, tough. But listen, we got so many messages yesterday from teachers saying, I'm telling you, we are just not prepared for this. We are worried about the students. We'd like to hear from you today because this looks like it's coming in September from teachers, for students, from parents. What do you make of this? 0896 111 111. It's been fascinating to watch what's happening this week. Brian Mooney, Irish Times editorial columnist, thank you so much for joining us. And Kieran Christie, General Secretary of the ASTI, thank you so much for joining us this morning, Kieran. We really appreciate it.